Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Thursday, October 13th. Today we have a continuation of the series of shows we've been doing about the local elections and candidates coming in to discuss their views and positions to help inform all of you. And today it's our pleasure to have with us David Durfee, who is the state representative for the Benn-3 district, and he is running against Victor Harwood Jr. David is a Democrat, Victor is a Republican, and the two of them will, well, you voters will decide who will go on to Montpelier come January. Representative Durfee has been representing the district since 2018, so he'd be running for a third term.
Yep.
While he's not in the legislature, he is a consultant to cooperatives, nonprofits, and small businesses, and also serves on the boards of the Bennington-Rutland Opportunity Council, and also on the Mount Anthony Union High School School Board, and was also a member of the former Shaftsbury School Board. Mr. Harwood is a part-time associate at Home Depot in Bennington, and before that, he was a veteran of the U.S. Navy. Retired as a lieutenant commander, and then worked as a defense contractor supporting naval aircraft for reliability for tactical aircraft. Mr. Harwood, thank you very much for making the time to come in and be with us today. Thank you, Dave, for being here too. We really appreciate you making the time for this conversation. All right, well, without any further ado, let's get started. Both of our candidates will have 2 minutes or so to give opening statements, after which we'll go to a series of questions and finish up with 1 minute long closing statements at the back end. So, Mr. Harwood, let's get us started here.
I'm Victor Harwood, as he mentioned before, and I'm running because I feel as though Vermont has become not what the founding fathers foresaw. It was about freedom, it was about the individual, work hard, get rewards, don't be taxed to death, and almost a laissez-faire, kind of thing. And I've looked at I came back to Vermont after spending approximately 36 years in Virginia Beach, and I saw less taxation in Virginia. I saw more freedom in Virginia, and each time I came back to Vermont, it just seemed like a little bit more was whittled away, and whittled away, and whittled away. And I saw the taxes go up. I saw myself come back here, leaving a $1,000 property tax to having a $6,000 property tax, and I don't see the benefits of that property tax. I don't see a transparency. And what I'm looking to find, and hopefully it's been a common chord with the people that I've talked to in town, and I like everybody. I like the farmers, I like the laborers, I like the people that work for the town, and there's a common theme there. It's the same theme as me. It's what are we getting for the taxes? Why are we paying, this amount of taxes? Our schools don't seem to be working like they used to. Civics doesn't seem to be taught, even though there's supposed to be a test, I believe, at the end. I could be corrected on that. But I decided to be proactive. I was military for 20 years. I've been in combat, and I think I got another fight left in me if it requires a fight in Montpelier. And I think with my blood, which is some of the oldest in Vermont, the oldest cemetery in Vermont, I can trace my ancestry too. And I want to give it a shot for the Green Mountain Boys. It's all yours.
All right, thank you, Victor. All right, Dave, over to you.
All right, thank you. And thank you for having us. And I wanted to just say, as we start, thank you to Victor for running. There are a number of races this year where there isn't any contest, and I think it's good for democracy to have
Absolutely.
Give voters a choice. So as you said, I'm Dave Durfee. I live in Shaftsbury. I have been serving in the State House for the last 4 years, the last 2 sessions. So I'm hoping that the voters will send me back. I just wanted to clarify. I'm no longer on the Mount Anthony School Board. I'm sorry if I didn't give you that clear information, Andrew, but I've stepped down. I'm now serving as the treasurer for the MAU and for the SVSU as well. So I got into the race 4 years ago originally because I felt that I could bring my skills and my background. I was a teacher at one point. I did serve on the school board for quite a while. I have a degree in business, an MBA, and experience working for a number of small businesses. And I felt that I also had a good understanding of the political process and thought that I could contribute something if I were elected. And I'd like to think that I have. We've accomplished quite a lot despite the pandemic in the last 4 years in Montpelier, and I think we'll probably get a chance to speak to some of the specifics and when we're talking about some of the challenges that the state faces. So in any case, I'm hoping that I'll have another chance to go back and work on that.
Well, all right. Well, let's go on and talk about some of the issues that are percolating around out there this election cycle. Some of them are ones that we've heard about before and we talked about before. Some of them are more recent. But as I've been trying to kind of follow things over the course of the last couple of months, it seems pretty clear that the housing question is a big topic of conversation for a lot of folks. We just don't have enough of it, particularly on the sort of workforce or affordable housing end of the market. And I know that the legislature, the state of Vermont, received a lot of money from the federal government to, as part of the COVID pandemic relief package, and a lot of that went into housing development, and it's probably just too early to see some of the fruits of that yet. But David, let me start with you. Beyond what the state may have already be doing at this point, what else should we be doing or could we do to encourage developers and builders to construct more housing?
Right. Well, yeah, and the state did put in a considerable amount of money, much of which had come through from the federal government, I think in the order of $200 million. And yeah, I think that we're still waiting to see a lot of that sort of make an impact. And I guess I would also say that there have been a number of things that have happened over the past couple of years, maybe as a result of the pandemic, but even before that, there was a housing shortage in the state. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. It's we've got Act 250 and other parts of statute that are intentionally there to try and restrict rampant development. And we also have tax policies that try to encourage older Vermonters to keep their homes and stay in their homes, and that has perhaps put a limit on the available housing too. So what can we do going forward? Well, there's an existing program that is funded every year by statute to put in several $10 million-ish annually into the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board to provide housing credits, and that annually, that allocation is sent off somewhere else to be used for other programs in the general fund. And I am going to speak to that this year and hope that other colleagues will as well, that everyone acknowledges there's a housing shortage and we have an existing program, why aren't we using it? A response to that might be, well, it's not just money that we need a workforce to build, and that maybe your next question is workforce, because that's a broader problem too, and it's sort of a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation there. We need workers to build the housing, we need housing to attract workers. So beyond that, I would just say that we have been intentional about some of the things that may have put a limit on housing. We need to be equally intentional about programs that will incentivize developers and others to be focused on our villages and our downtowns. The state needs to provide and support infrastructure there. We need to take a close look at zoning regulations that may make it difficult for builders to do that. We don't want to be prohibiting somebody from putting up a multi-family building on a lot where it makes perfect sense because there's zoning that says, no, we can't do that. So.
All right. Well, Victor, what are your thoughts on the housing question?
Well, I would agree with that. I would agree with most of the things Dave says, especially about the monies that are getting shifted from a program like that. What I'm still concerned about is, as I said in my opening, was you can provide housing, but if people can't pay their taxes and pay their rent, I guess it would be rent or buying the house. These mortgages, especially now, our mortgage rates have went crazy. My daughter's a real estate broker in Virginia Beach, and she said they've laid off people and because of the lack of interest in housing. But housing is a long-term thing, and yeah, the infrastructure that Dave, I'm getting a little disjointed, but the infrastructure thing, I'm thinking about $10 million to get rid of lead pipes. Like how many lead pipes are there in Bennington, but still we need the housing, for people, and we need incentives for people to come here to fill that housing. I think way too many people rent when they could be actually saving money by new houses, new housings, new developments, new communities. And heck, that's the way that I paid for my house up here. Was selling my house in Virginia Beach, and it was triple the value, and it was worth a lot. But still, I came up to these suffocating taxes. Maybe there's another way of funding state government. Maybe there's a flat tax which could be used with everybody paying the same amount, because I'm certain there are people that aren't paying at all, toward this thing. Federal funds are good as long as they're used, as long as they're being monitored. With this COVID thing, with other stimuluses, you wonder how that money is actually spent, how effective it is, how much fraud is involved in it. Fraud is coming to the forefront now. There's just a lack of control. It's like an open wallet. And that's what I'm afraid of. But on the basis of what Dave did say, I agree with. I can't throw any stones at that. But like $10 million is a pittance when it comes to construction of housing. That's not many units. And
well, let me explore or drill down a little bit here, something that both of you referred to, and that's this workforce question, because that's another one that's been batted back and forth for seems like a long time now. Vermont's an aging state, the demographics are skewing in the wrong direction. We need to attract more younger folks to come here, but in part because housing is so expensive, trying to lure folks from away to come to here to work gets to be a little tricky sometimes. So moving on to that whole workforce question, is there some way you think that the state could attract more residents? I know, for instance, the state did a program, I believe it's still running, where folks who wanted to move here and could work remotely would get $10,000 or so to offset their travel expenses. Is that a program you think, Dave, that could be continued? Did it work well and brought folks here?
I actually am not sure how what the data is on that and how effective it was. My sense is that people are now, anyway, are going to be moving to Vermont without anybody having to pay their moving expenses or reimburse them for their job hunt, for their house hunt. It goes back to the housing question too. I speak a little bit more to the workforce situation in general, and it's across every industry, it seems. And I had my first appointment with a new healthcare provider, a new doctor, a couple of weeks ago, and I was new to him, and he was new to town, and he said, when he found out, he asked me what I did, and I told him I was in the legislature, and he said, well, you probably hear this from everybody, but housing. And I don't have, I'm renting. I couldn't find a house. And, afterwards I was thinking, how long will we be able to keep that person? The hospital has been talking for quite a while, again, before the pandemic, about the challenges of bringing new doctors to the system because there weren't places to live. And they may have looked as far as Manchester from Bennington and further south too, even into the other states. So, what can we do? And there are obviously not easy answers. One thing, and this will sort of be dominoing into another topic, but the availability of childcare is something that often comes up in conjunction with this conversation about workforce. And I'm hoping that in the next session, the legislature will continue the good work that it has been doing, sort of laying the groundwork over the past few years for improving the system that we do, that existing system that we have in the state, that will allow for more spots to be available, better access to childcare, to affordable childcare, to high quality affordable childcare for people who then would be able to go out and join the workforce.
Okay. Victor, any thoughts on how to amp up the workforce here in Vermont?
I've thought about that a lot. Okay, and I know Dave took a look at it years ago. There's an article in the paper that he couldn't understand apparently why, what benefit it would be to have retired military come up here, even though they were paying 100% tax on their military pay. Now, I was one of the stupid ones. I did come up here, and my background, my span of control, my accountability in the Navy, I was the entire Atlantic Fleet aircraft maintenance officer at the end of my career. My span of control was probably greater than any executive in Vermont, anybody in the legislature. It involved so many billions and billions of dollars to manage that, to budget that. And right now I don't use that because I'm working at Home Depot on part-time. I've had a couple successful careers, but we're turning off the people. They just passed a bill that had a ceiling on it for earnings, and I don't think I'm going to be able to have any benefit from my retirement pay. However, 2 miles from my house in New York State, I wouldn't be taxed on it. In Massachusetts, I wouldn't be taxed on it. Why do retired military who are retiring at 38 years old, that are highly trained, highly motivated, ready for another career, you gotta put the apple in front of them for them to take a bite out of it. And I think they should go in just no taxes on military retirement. I don't know what the effect that would be on the budget, but I think that the benefits would far outweigh that. And we need to enable people to want to come here, qualified people, not a whole bunch of illegal people that we want to provide subsidies to. There.
Dave,
Not a panacea, but it's a start.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on the tax on military pay and pensions?
Retired guys.
Yeah. So we looked at this over the past couple of years in the Ways and Means Committee, and a couple of things. We actually took testimony from the tax department and from others, from our joint fiscal office. Vermont has a higher than average percentage of military retirees already living in the state. And we are one of the few. I think you're absolutely right about that. The concern from a dollars and cents perspective was if we eliminate all of the tax on pension income for retired military, we know what we're giving up. There's no clear indication that we would be getting that back by more people moving in. Partly because we know that every other state already has that incentive, and why would they come to Vermont particularly? And again, we already have a fairly high percentage. We also took testimony that military retirees tend to stay in the area where they're serving, and on bases that aren't in Vermont, in other words. That being said, we did pass, the House did pass, and it went through our committee, an exemption, a flat $10,000 exemption on military pension money.
I'm sorry.
Which would have been for, I think, for 25% of the military retiree population, it would have covered their entire pension. And so we passed that on. It died in the Senate. And to be honest, I think part of the reason it died in the Senate was the governor said he wouldn't sign it. So that, his position was all or nothing. And so we ended up with nothing. But then this past year, and you brought this up too, Victor, we did add a tax exemption, but it is entirely income-based. So it's not a flat, $10,000 off. So those who are earning not much more than their pension won't have to pay on it. But if it's a pension on top of a larger pension on top of other income, then they would.
Just a question to Dave. Now, does Social Security count, in that math?
Yes, Social Security does count in the math in the bill that we did pass.
Are we one of 13 states that taxes Social Security?
Yeah, so that's another interesting topic. And
well, it's very interesting
that,
because that bill does not mean anything to me. As a military person, as an incentive to come back here. Even though I came back. Again, I told you I wasn't the brightest bulb in the pack, but I came here because of my roots.
Yeah, and I think
it's costing me many thousands of dollars.
I don't think it's that anybody's not the brightest bulb in the pack that we have higher than average percentage of compared with other states. I think that there are other things about whether you're from here or that it's an appealing place to live. It's a healthy and safe place to live. But
well, it is. It is,
yeah.
and I love it. I love the mountains. I love the people, and it's that important to me. Just on the Social Security, because that's another topic that comes up. We have. Right now, if your income is Social Security and nothing else, you don't pay on that. It's entirely exempt. As your income if you have an additional income, then you may be put in a bracket where, yes, you are paying something on your Social Security.
Victor, I just wanted to go back real quick before we move on. You're saying that eliminating the tax on military pay and pensions would be a good way to attract?
Not necessarily military pay, because you have bases up here, okay? And those guys should be liable for taxes, because they're here. They're active duty.
So it's the pensions.
Yeah, I'm talking just the pensions.
So that would in theory attract folks who are retiring out of the military to come
at
here.
38 years old, technically extremely proficient.
Okay.
Again, management abilities.
Does that imply having more older people come to the state as opposed to folks who are, in their 30s or 40s and still have many productive working years, if we're trying to build the workforce of the state with younger?
Well, again, you're getting 38-year-old, potential 38 years, 20 years of service. That's kind of what I'm saying.
And
now,
not just 50 or 60
would it attract a guy that just finished up an enlistment?
Yeah.
No, because he's not getting paid anything afterwards. Right. He's not drawing anything.
Okay, I just wanted to get clear on that. Mm-hmm. And I did want to then move on to a point you just raised, Dave, about childcare.
Could you get that Social Security again and why we even tax it? That's bought and paid for retirement, and that's people's nest egg.
Yeah.
And why Vermont's got to have a piece of it is beyond me.
Yeah, so again, if you're not making anything other than Social Security, then you don't pay any tax on it. And
so that's a disincentive to work, correct? Or a disincentive to invest?
So in addition to that, there is, and we actually raised, there's a floor that the House and the Senate passed and the governor signed this year to raise. You can earn, if you're a single person, you can earn up to $55,000, which gives you quite a bit of space between what the maximum Social Security is, and I think it's around 32. So you can definitely earn some more income. I mean, we have in Vermont a progressive tax system. It is not a flat tax, as you know.
Well, I like the
mentioning
flat
earlier.
tax. That's equality. That's equality.
It's a progressive system that essentially says the more capacity you have to pay, the more we'll ask you to contribute to the state. So that's and that's why if you're somebody who has, in addition to Social Security income, other income, we're looking at it as income, and if it's available to be taxed, then that's, you know, the source of the income is less important than the fact that it's income. So, but again, if you're only making Social Security, if that's all your income, then you're not taxed on it.
Okay.
I'm gonna let it slide now.
All right.
We might come back to
All
it.
right. Well, we've
fine.
got a little time.
I love
So-
taxes, you can tell, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to
Yeah.
query you a bit on the flat tax thing too at some point too,
Yeah.
because that's an interesting subject.
Very.
I guess it's not an issue this year, but I know it's been under discussion in the past, and an interesting idea and all that. But
Well,
And
see,
some
see,
states
see,
have-
see
some
with the
states have
flat
it, yeah.
tax, though, you know, you look at your property tax bill, and you're thinking, hey, you know, my kids are already all the way through school. It happened to have been down in Virginia, but I'm getting killed, you know, with this tax, and it's the biggest part of my tax. You know, why am I paying for that? Why am I paying for school lunches? You know, why
you mean
am
education
I
tax.
doing that? Because I paid for school lunches for my kids all the way through school. And again, I'm kind of bringing it back to me and my experience, but you know, where is that written? That's a function of government to subsidize, you know, breakfasts and lunches. And how about the parents? Where's parental responsibility there?
Well,
and
that's-
because they don't have any money because they're paying property taxes. No, never. Go ahead.
okay. Well, you gave us a good segue into the childcare question. So, is there anything that the state can do about this situation that it's not currently doing that you think would be a good idea? I mean, one of the areas around this whole question is the low rate of pay that folks who work in child care centers get. I was reading an article in the paper today that it's in the lowest 2% of all jobs in the entire country. 98% of workers make more than the average child care worker does. So that's, I talk about disincentives, right? So I guess I'm just wondering, is it just a question of, hey, you know, we're just going to have to let the, you know, the private sector sort this out, or is there something that the state could do beyond what may be happening now to try and create more child care opportunities for parents?
Do you want me to take it, or do you want to?
Well, you know, I look at the root cause of this. You know, we all have gray hair, you know, and or no hair, and but you know, when I was brought up, I had a stay-at-home mother at home, and I guess the mom or dad could have done it just as well, but it was like it was a parent was at home, and you know, that bond between parent and child, to me, was so important over the course of my life. We were able to do the same thing with my children. My children do not know what the inside of a daycare place is all about, and they understand that, and they know that I had to bite the bullet, you know, on that one, which I was glad to do as long as I possibly could, and it worked out. But we have created this system where, or a system, I don't know, system is really the word for it, but where both parents have to work. Well, why, you know, a housewife, a child rearer, that is a full-time job in and of itself. You know, what's the marginal difference between what they're paying for child care and how you balance that out with your children being with a babysitter? You know, it's that root cause that I have a problem with, not to keep putting Band-Aids, you know, on the problem. Hey, how can we possibly free up, you know, these couples? Why can't we pay more? Maybe we need to pay more. I know that I couldn't survive right now if I was full-time at Home Depot working in appliances. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pay my taxes. I couldn't pay my heating, which is out of control. And you know, heck, even that critical heating oil is they just raised the taxes on that a couple years ago. You know, I think the taxes should go away on home heating, whether it be pellets, whether it be fuel oil, whether it be propane. I don't think we should tax that for people. They're making decisions nowadays, elderly people, on a fixed income on, hey, am I going to eat or am I going to freeze? I'm hoping for global warming so I don't use up so much fuel oil. You know, it's just a difficult state of affairs right now. And I think it should be something we should be concerned about, especially going into the winter time. But there you have these Vermonters out there, and yeah, I'm going to characterize them as Vermonters, but they're too proud to ask for help. They don't want a subsidy from the government. You know, they want to do it themselves. And my hat's off to them, but I don't want them to freeze to death. And if they ask me for a couple dollars, I'll give it to them. I'm sorry. It's my soapbox.
Yeah.
And I think Dave agrees with me too.
Well, let me just go back to the first part of the question on the pay that child care workers get, and it's vastly. I didn't know that statistic. I wouldn't have thought it was even that low.
Well, what is the average, cost? Do you have any idea? You mentioned it, but what does it cost a family for one child for, the week child care?
I mean, off the top of my head, I couldn't give you a good dollar figure on that.
But it's
my
a lot.
understanding-
It's a lot.
Well, it's a lot. Yeah, it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And just the pay rate for those workers, I think, is in the $12 to $14 an hour range.
Probably.
Roughly.
Yeah,
That's my understanding.
yeah, it may be
sure there's
nationally.
someone
It
more
may
than
be
that.
lower than it is in Vermont. But when you think about the fact that a teacher in the public school system, a kindergarten teacher, for example, comes in at a higher rate, whatever that actual rate is, they're going to be paid more to teach kindergarten than they would be if they were taking care of a 4-year-old. Just not much of a difference. Just down the road in a child care center. So I think that these are our kids we're talking about, and if you are in a position where you need to work, if one income just simply isn't going to cut it, given the cost of living, then you want to put your kids someplace where you can feel that they're in good hands, and you want that teacher to be paid enough so that it's not just somebody who's taking that job rather than working at Dunkin' Donuts. Not that I have a problem with Dunkin' Donuts, but we know that they're paying because they put their signs out and they say, help wanted. So I think definitely increasing the pay for the child care workers is a big piece of it, just in order to attract more people in the profession. Getting to the point where they're even thinking about it in school by providing tuition breaks. We have loan repayment options that are available for certain professions too. Making sure that there is, adequate space in the training programs that are offered in the state. Those are pretty critical. The issue then is, who's going to pay for that? If you raise the wage of a child care worker, are you asking the parents to pay then to cover that? And we have an existing program in the state that helps parents who can't afford it, and that's an existing program that probably needs to be expanded to more people once we get the workers to provide access for parents.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously if you wanted to boost the pay of a child care worker from, let's say, $13 an hour to $20, well, that money's got to come from somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's going to come from the parents.
And I would say,
they're already paying a lot.
Yeah, it shouldn't come from property taxes, and specifically it shouldn't come from the education fund. So right now, that kindergarten teacher who's taking care of the 5-year-old is, if it's a public school, she's paid by money that's largely raised through property taxes. And if we're talking about where would that money come from, I would say not property taxes. It should come from the general fund. So.
Okay. Victor, I just had a quick question before we move on. You said that we shouldn't have taxes like on the military pensions and a few other things. Taxes clearly are a major issue for you.
It is.
But if we kind of trim taxes in too many areas, how does the state budget get balanced then? I mean, because the federal largesse that's flowed into the state over the last couple of years is not going to go on forever. I think it's probably over with anyway at this point. So
Well,
at some point, if we're cutting taxes here and cutting taxes there, don't we have a budgetary problem, or do we have to then cut services? The government does as well.
Well, I think we have too many services, personally. I think we have a bloated Montpelier. I think the Department of Education has proven to be significantly larger per capita. The ratio of Department of Education people with pupils, actually in the class is, I think it's like 125% compared to the average. And I have a problem with Montpelier being bloated. I have a problem with having, and again, I'm going to compare a place that I lived for 35 years, Virginia Beach, with roughly a little bit smaller population than Vermont, but with my property taxes being $1,000, Vice up here $6,000. And I lived in a nice place down there. I have a hard time looking at statistics for monies and taxes, and looking at Vermont is number 3 per capita taxation overall, and looking at Wyoming, which is a larger state geographically, with approximately the same population, the same representation in Congress, being on the other side of the spectrum. Vermont is like number 3, and Wyoming is like number 47. And I'm thinking, what is Wyoming doing right with a guy like me that's fixated on taxes? We did fight a revolution because of that. We fought a revolution because of that, and we fought a revolution because of a centralized government in London. And I think people forget that a lot. Services are neat. Some are superfluous. Government involvement. If things can get screwed up, the government can screw them up, and I think a lot of people know that. If we civilianize, I think the child care. Maybe, I don't know, if we could create a commission maybe of experts in the field to say, hey, let's think outside the box. Let's brainstorm. Let's put stuff all over the walls. Let's try to figure out a different approach where the government can help us do this. And let's find the root cause of the problem right now. Yes, I think they should be paid more. I worry about the safety of the kids. I worry about the screening. God, that would cost you money too. I don't know how they're screened. Dave, you might know. Child care people, do they have a license? Mm-hmm. I'm sure that the place does, but as far as the employees, that's where I would worry the most about my children being involved in a place like that, and I would hope that they would.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my take.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to another issue that's top of mind for a
But flat taxes, though, going back to flat taxes, I don't know how many corporations have a good deal in Vermont. And
I don't either.
Yeah, see, no. And there are some significant major corporations, in the Burlington area.
Right.
And I'd like to, I don't know if that's public knowledge of what their taxes are up there. We hear of too many corporations, and I'm kind of on Bernie Sanders' side here about corporations not paying any taxes.
Right, there are. And
they should
do you mind if we have a?
Oh yeah, go.
And they should be paying 15%, just like me, 12 to 15% flat tax.
So
no deductions, no nothing.
Bernie talks about a corporate minimum tax, and we actually do have businesses that do business in Vermont or that sell to Vermonters. They may not necessarily be based here, whose books they don't show a profit. So they're able to, set it up so that they're not earning any money, so they're not taxed on their profit. There is a structure, a tax structure, an existing tax structure in Vermont that requires you to pay a minimum tax, but it was nothing. And large, big companies were getting off pretty much scot-free. So we made some changes to that this past year so that a company will be company will have to pay something, and it'll have to be something significant based on its sales, not just on its bottom line income. So, without naming, you can think of the companies that are big and that we might all do business with. So, yeah, I don't know that it really gets to what you're saying there, Victor, but that's part of part of the issue. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly worth, William F. Buckley Jr. wrote a book, For Reforms, years ago, back in the 50s. And, it's the initial thing I saw about flat tax. It's an interesting thing because I've talked to people about the flat tax and they don't quite get it. But they need to look at that in kind of more detail. And it works out for the better. Cripes almighty, the progressive taxes, what a disincentive to make money.
Well,
and cripes, people should, you're getting penalized, and you shouldn't. That's not the way America was built. And I'm a historical kind of guy, and I think you guys are too.
Well, isn't the problem with one of the criticisms of a flat tax is that it basically, if you're on the lower end of the spectrum and you still make enough money to pay taxes in the first place,
is that bad?
You're paying proportionally more of your income than, let's say, someone who's making 6 figures or more.
You're paying 15%.
Right, just the same amount, but
or 12%. I like
15% of, let's say, $30,000 a year in income versus 15% of $300,000 is a big difference.
Well, it is.
And therefore, a progressive.
But how many people are paying no taxes right now?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head, but
it's a large percentage that are paying no taxes. Nothing, zero, and.
I mean, I'll grant you the idea of a flat tax is interesting because it simplifies things.
Well, the thing is, it's
equality. You could theoretically fill out your tax return on a postcard, I guess.
And that's exactly the way, I thought Trump was going to do that with the postcard. Well, that never came through. I didn't like the sound of that. And I tell you, you said I run under the GOP banner and I'm a Republican. Yes, I am running under the GOP banner, but I am much more conservative and a libertarian. I've seen the GOP stray, I've seen the Democrats stray, and I'm me. I want to represent the people of Shaftsbury. It's not the party. I'm loyal to the USA. I'm loyal to Vermont. My blood's here, okay? But it's mainly to those folks in Shaftsbury. And if those folks in Shaftsbury tell me that I'm screwed up, I will take that on board. And I think Dave would do the same thing. I think he has. Dave's a nice guy. I try to be.
All right. Well, let's move on here to another topic here that's I know been batted around a lot this year and the last couple of years, I guess, and that's law enforcement. We hear how local police departments, like the one in Bennington, for instance, or I believe in Manchester, and certainly the one in Burlington, has gotten a lot of attention. Aren't enough officers. The state police is short by a sizable number of officers that they have vacancies for. What again could the legislature do in this area that would improve that situation, or is it a case of restructuring the police department? Is it something else, or is it just a case of we're in an unusual situation now, coming out of the pandemic, we hope, and what that all caused, and it'll all sort itself out, and things will all kind of get back to normal at some point. Dave, how do you start with that?
Yeah, I mean, yes. The last time I talked to the commander at the barracks in Shaftsbury, they were down 4 out of 11, I think. So significant, shortage of staffers, and we know the Bennington Police Department is similarly understaffed. And I don't know where Manchester is at the moment. I saw yesterday Bernie took a question on this when he was in town, and similar question, and he said, well, that he wants to be sure that police are paid enough. That would be one way to get people in. And yeah, I mean, I would certainly say, as with some of the other professions we've talked about, and in the state clearly, where government has a role in this, is in making sure there's adequate pay, and not just upfront pay, but a pension that is going to be there for them, and we did look at, and we shored up the pension system. I know for the state troopers, they were they were involved in that conversation, and we reached a good agreement this past year. I'll just say the Bennington Police Department has been in the news, and I think that they've taken heat from a number of sources. My sense is they've worked extremely hard with the select board to try and improve the situation there. It's a tough job having the national situation that we do, with a focus on equity and bias in the way that people are treated, only can make it more difficult for somebody to think, is this the profession that I want to go into? So, yes, we can probably say eventually it will sort itself out. How long will that take? And so I would, in the meantime, encourage, if you're thinking about a career in law enforcement, there are openings there, and there are training programs, and there is effort being made to try and speed people through those programs. I think not to the point where they're not well trained, but so that they're not held up. So.
Okay. And Victor, your thoughts on what we need to do to fix the problem, if that's the right term?
Well, it's got to be the pros that do it, number one. I see too often where the media thinks they're pros. The media doesn't understand that there's bad people out there. And, you get in New York State, your bail laws and things like that, and letting a person out, of jail bond free. And, but with the police, I guess the term that I'm looking for is that they are professional. They have to deal with again, bad guys. And I support them fully, despite sometimes charges that are unjustified, that make the headlines. But then when the media finds out that hey, it was in this situation and they attacked the policeman and the policeman had to defend himself. Well, you don't hear the reclama there. You don't hear it. You have politicians calling police Nazis in the media. So what are other people thinking? Well, are my policemen Nazis? No, they're trying to do their job. They get up in the morning with their kids and their wife. They have breakfast. They stop a car for a taillight out, and it could be loaded with fentanyl and machine guns and everything else. And how many of them have died? How many of them have died today, doing their job? There's been a couple that I just read about this morning. And yeah, they need more money. They need to be paid. I don't know how Vermont stacks up with the other states, but it at least needs to be equal. And again, my hat is off to them, and I give a hand salute to every policeman I see in uniform.
Do either of you think, what about you think of the idea of embedding social workers in police departments, rather than, let's say, a typical police department, well, let's say, might have 10 officers, would be normal. I said maybe the idea would be to have 8 officers and 2 social workers who are trained to deal with, these sort of situations that can escalate out of control, and you have someone who understands how you can maybe talk people down off the ledge.
So we're doing it, actually, and I would just say it shouldn't necessarily be rather than, but it should be in addition to. I think there's not. We need the police at the staffing level that we've budgeted for, but actually the public safety department at the state level came forward to the legislature a couple of years ago with a pilot program, sort of a test, and then that's grown. So there's somebody now who is affiliated with counseling in Bennington, who works in conjunction with the local barracks. And I've talked to both of those organizations just to get a sense of how is that working. The favorable reviews from everybody. So if there's a call from somebody who might be a known individual who has had previous interactions with either the police or the other agency, then that person, the social worker, then it doesn't necessarily need to be stationed with an office in the barracks. I'm not sure how much time they're spending there, but
They wouldn't be at a disturbance, would they? Because I'd be worried about the social worker, you know.
yeah. So they'll come in. It'd be somebody who's trained to not go alone, but to be there in addition to de-escalate, to hopefully keep it from, ideally from becoming a truly dangerous situation, or from, and possibly diverting the person so that there's not another call the next day. And I would be in favor of, from what I've heard, the program works well. I would be in favor of expanding that to local forces if that's helpful.
Okay.
I agree with
Anything
that.
you wanted to add to
No,
it?
I really agree with that, but I guess we're not large enough, say in Bennington, to have and I would kind of look at hostage mediation type people would be along the same lines to knock down that idea of violence or people getting hurt, and even care, for a person that's distraught. Where do we direct them? Where can they get help? I think that's a big element here, because oftentimes these people are mentally ill or on drugs. Who knows what. I certainly would not be professional there. Not the guy to ask.
We have a couple of minutes left before we have to go to our closing statement, so I'll just throw one more quick question your way to both of you here, and it's hard because it's a complex subject and full of nuance and everything, but the clean heat standard measure didn't make it to the finish line in the legislature. It was vetoed by the governor, and the veto is not overridden. I guess I'm just wondering, Dave, if the clean heat standard or some version of that comes back next term and you're reelected and back in Montpelier, would you vote to support it?
Yeah, I would. I voted for it. I guess I voted for it twice because we had, as you said, the governor vetoed it, and so it came back, and we had a second vote that failed to pass by one vote. So yes, I would support that. And just to say quickly why the law now requires that the state meet reduction goals in carbon emissions and other global warming gases. So we established a climate council that made recommendations on how to do that most cost effectively, and the clean heat standard was at the top of the list to meet those goals. So without it, in order to meet the goals, which are statutorily required, we were looking at some other solution that won't be as cost effective. So.
And just a quick follow-up, one of the criticisms the governor had of it was that it was going to be administered by the Public Utility Commission, which I guess is an elected group of state officials, and his concern was that that should be the job of the legislature to kind of enforce it. Do you feel that was a valid criticism?
I'm not sure that it was an accurate criticism to begin with, and so it's the PUC has regulatory authority in a number of areas currently that we allow them to have. So even if it were an accurate criticism, and I'm not sure that it was, it wouldn't be beyond the pale.
Okay. Victor, your thoughts on the clean heat standard or other climate change related legislation that the legislature should perhaps be thinking about or not?
Well, I think that we're too focused. I'm a green guy. I'm an environmentalist. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. I'm worried about accountability and how much money contractors are making on the green efforts. I'm not a windmill person. I'm not an electric car person. I think we can run clean internal combustion engines. I think there's a lot of other, for electric cars, we've seen the cartoons, we've seen the things on the internet where they show coal cars, and these are what's going to charge up, your electric cars. Heat, any way you can get it. And I don't want you burning tires. I don't want you burning things like that. You know, Dave's got a wood stove. You know, I saw his pile of wood out there. In fact, I took a picture of it that I was going to use, and I was going to say, I wonder how clean that wood is. But,
It's very dry.
exactly. Yeah. But, you know, we're all in this environment together. And, but, you know, what's happening, what I'm concerned about, the winds come from the west, and we can make Vermont so clean, and we can keep getting dirty by Ohio and New York and you know, everything else, you know, and I don't think we should maintain the status quo. We have to be custodians of our environment. We all have to do that. We all have to pick up trash. We all have to, you got your car's running crummy and it's smoking like crazy, well, get it fixed or get a freaking ticket, you know, and no, I don't want to do that. And, but no, I don't like the way. I think that the legislature needs to convince the folks better, you know, when they're taking votes, especially on the green. And I don't think, from what I'm talking to a lot of people, they are not convinced, especially with the electric vehicles.
Okay.
And,
Well,
and we're in Little Vermont, but you know, I commute down to, or I go down to Virginia, and I hate the idea of stopping for a charge, you know, 400 miles down the road when I've still got a couple hundred to go, or 150. But anyhow, that's
the
me.
old range anxiety.
That's me. That's me.
Right.
How do batteries react in the cold up here? Pretty good.
I guess
I'm sorry.
Well, I think it's time for us to get to the closing statements here before we run out of time. Victor, I'll let you go first because Dave went first with the opening statement, and then we'll have Dave close things up for us.
Sure. I'd like to thank each of you folks, for having me. And Dave, thanks for coming up. We should have commuted together.
Yes,
you know
we should have
that?
carpooled.
You know, I thought about that. I thought about that when I was in front of Paulins. I said, man, I wonder if he's left yet.
I didn't think of it, so thank you. For,
that's what we need to do. I think there's a lot of dialogue that still needs to be made. I think there's a lot of folks up in Montpelier, I think, that are very good. Their hearts are absolutely in what they're doing up there. I think there's other people up there, just like in any group, that they try to be doctors during COVID and they're not. They try to be military, you know, and they're not. They try to be nuclear engineers and they're not, okay? But maybe I like the idea of nuclear is a fix for the energy. A lot of people that are in the green world are terribly anti-nuclear. I think it's the cleanest power there is. All we have to do is put the waste on SpaceX and shoot it into space. You know, that's been my biggest negative, you know, about the nuclear. But again, the dialogue is always good. We need both sides talking. I don't see that up in Montpelier at all, or at least from the media. And these parties, again, the parties irk me. We need the dialogue. Whether you disagree or disagree, you have to respect another person or people, their ideas, their feelings. If we don't talk about it, that's what this country was founded on. And I'm going to jump off my soapbox and close down my closing statement. David, you have it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Victor, and thank you, Andrew, for having us. And thank you to the viewers out there in Sunderland and beyond, Shaftsbury and Glastonbury, although I'm not sure that your
All three of them?
your signal reaches down there. But no, I mean, I think it's great to have opportunities like this, forums like this for you know, constructive civil conversation. So I am happy to answer questions. I'm sure we both are from, you know, from constituents. You can find us, Googling us or whatever, and you know, look forward to having conversations with folks. And thank you for your consideration.
Thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you again the next time.